Chris.
There you go. Good. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Help Your Child Do Their Best presentation and panel discussion. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate everyone coming out. For those who don't know me, and there are actually a few more than I thought might be that do, my name is Drew Braley. I'm a landscape architect with Browning Day Mullins Deerdorf in Indianapolis. And I'm a student in this year's class of the Hamilton County Leadership Academy, aka on Twitter, #HamcoFinest for the few of us that are in the room. HCLA educates individuals about local issues, enhancing their leadership abilities in preparation for service in Hamilton County. Aside from attending our monthly class sessions, one of the requirements for graduation is the completion of a group project. My teammates for this project are Janet Guffian. Janet, where are you? She's at the door. At the door. And Kert Toler down here in front, who will also be on the panel later this evening. We also have quite a few of our classmates in the room. Thank you guys for your support, much appreciated. As well as our distinguished curriculum dean, Miss Liz Tate. Thank you, Liz. If anybody has any questions about the HCLA program, I know I've talked to at least a couple in the room about it. I'm hoping to recruit somebody from our office to apply. Janet, myself, Kurt, and any of the others would be more than happy to talk about it. It's been a fantastic experience. 8 months down, 2-ish to go, so we're getting close. Also want to make sure and thank our sponsors. Their names are on the back of the program. We have them up here as well. Partnership for a Healthy Hamilton County. Janet is executive director of that program as well. And Browning Day Mullins Deerdorf, Stens Construction Company, Hamilton County Community Foundation, Mackenzie, thank you, and Community Health Network. As well as in-kind sponsorship, we have Town Post Network here offering up the live stream for everybody, much appreciated. Good Samaritan Network and Eastern Engineering for their printing in-kind donations. Thank you, everybody. So anyway, back to the real reason that we're here tonight. As we work to identify our potential projects at the beginning of the class or school year, or topics that were of importance to us when we first began the program, I found myself focusing in on children. We have 7-year-old twins and an almost 3-year-old. So I was focusing on children, sports, they are definitely an active bunch, and mental health. Our son has struggled at times with anxiety, stress, frustration, when things don't go his way or when he doesn't get things right the first time. The struggle for perfection seems to be a constant in his mind. I promise it's not something we make him do. We always encourage him. But that got me thinking that in a lot of ways, there's this hidden or sometimes not so hidden message locally, nationally, that we need to be the best in work, in life, sports, whatever it might be. And we want to flip that mentality to being more focused on being your best. And so that's really where we kind of landed on as a topic and the focus of what we wanted to do. So we wanted to focus on being your best and giving everyone here some tools to help your child and yourself be their best. And that's really what tonight is about. So I would like to introduce Dr. Rob Bell, our keynote speaker and panel moderator for the evening. Dr. Rob, as he likes to go by, is a sports psychology coach, author, and speaker on mental toughness. He has spoken to the NFL, PGA, Marriott, Walgreens, and other corporate organizations and sports teams around the country. He has worked with, he has written numerous books, several of which you have the option to purchase in the back here after the event if you're interested. So without any further ado, Dr. Rob.
room. So, question to start out: Are you an athlete? Like, you consider yourself an athlete? So some of you might be thinking in your head, yes, absolutely, I'm an athlete. Some of you are like, absolutely not. And some of you are like, well, I don't know what he's asking. So what I like to share with people is that I 100% believe that everyone is an athlete. And I want to prove that to you. So let's go ahead. Let's stand up. Let's get the energy up in this room. Now, I hate to do this, I hate to do this, but as an athlete, everyone is also a coach, okay? So let's go ahead, let's have a seat one more time. I apologize, let's have a seat, because I totally messed that up. All right, let's go ahead, let's stand up, let's get the energy up in the room. Very nice, that's a little bit better, good. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna show you that everybody's an athlete. All we're gonna do is we're just gonna clap. Now, the reason why we're going to clap is because a better us is what makes a better you, and a better you is what makes a better us. Here's how we're going to clap. What we're going to do is we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cross, and then together. Easy, right? All right, I'm going to show you one more time, okay? Show you one more time. So you don't need to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you just need to clap, all right? So here's how we're going to do it. Okay, so for everybody that can see, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cross, and then together. Okay, so I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, and then we're just gonna let it rip. Okay, ready? Easy enough. Remember, everyone's an athlete. Think about for a second what you have to do to get centered. Okay. 1, 2, 3. You know what? Not bad. Not bad. I was impressed. You all have a good teacher. You all have a really good teacher. But there's something interesting with that. See, what happens a lot of times in life, and especially with athletes nowadays, is that was a very safe clap. Don't want to make any mistakes. Let's be safe so I don't put myself out there. See it all the time with athletes, because if they don't put themselves out there, then they can't be criticized. But we don't get any credit in life for being safe. So now I want you to be aggressive with it. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and this time just let it rip and be aggressive. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Very nice, very nice. Seems like everybody's an athlete. Now let's just add a little bit to it, right? Because what kind of coach would I be if I didn't make things more complicated, right? We're going to do it one more time. Let's say at the end we're going to go cross, cross together, and then let's, from the gut, we'll go, okay? So a little, okay, ready? On 3. 1, 2, whoa. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Have a seat, everybody. Very nice. Everyone is an athlete. Our office is just different. Think about what your office looks like. But everyone is an athlete. Our office is just different. What do I mean by that? Well, number one, as an athlete, we're going to prepare and we're going to practice way more than we're ever actually going to play or perform. Think about it. When you have a presentation that's coming up, how much preparation goes into it. As an athlete, we practice more than we're ever going to play. Second part about being an athlete that I think is important, although it's difficult, is, we're going to lose. As an athlete, I think we're going to have more losses, more setbacks in life than we're actually going to have wins. But also as an athlete, the good part is we are going to have those wins. Absolutely. And I think this is the best feeling we can have. The only problem with your office is when you have a really good game, nobody's patting you on the back saying, hey, wow, really great day today. And the other part about being an athlete, and this is the part that's really important, is as an athlete, we compete. Now, when we hear the word compete, I think we think about beating an opponent or besting somebody else. But the competition I'm talking about is the most difficult opponent that we have. The most difficult opponent that we have is always ourselves. Think about it for a second. The reason why we're always competing against ourselves is our mind has a strategic advantage over us. It 100% knows our strengths, it knows our weaknesses, it knows our shortcomings. So if you were to try to play an opponent who knows what you're going to do, it's tough to beat that opponent. Now, our opponent is simply our mind. And what I mean by that is our mind is only focused on one thing. Our mind is focused on one piece. Its job is to keep us safe. Our mind wants to keep us happy and cozy. It's contrary to trying to be the best that we can be, because we're always fighting that. That's why the very first thought that we have in the morning when our alarm goes off is don't get out of bed, stay in bed, because this is warm and cozy in here. Our mind is not focused on us being better. So in order to be the best at getting better, we're always competing against that opponent. Now, I want you to ask you a question before we get started here. What do you think is the most important mental skill? This is not a rhetorical question. I want to make sure that we all are on the same page, so I want you to put an answer in your head. What do you think is the most important mental skill? Anybody have one? All right, if you have an answer, I promise I'm not going to call on you. Raise your hand, because I just want to make sure. I promise I won't call on anybody. All right, that's how we get people. So I got this side of the group. Everybody, seriously, if you have one in your hand, I need you. If you have an idea of what you think is the most important mental skill, raise your hand. I won't call on anybody, I promise. Okay, what's the most important mental skill? All right, give me some answers. What do you think is the most important mental skill?
Perseverance.
Think perseverance?
Resilience.
Resilience?
Self-control.
Self-talk, self-control? Okay, good. What else?
Discernment.
Discernment. Look, we're only looking for like easy answers here. What do you mean by discernment?
Just being able to have judgment. Right?
Have judgment?
Good or bad.
Okay. What else? Give me some other ones.
Determination.
Determination, perseverance, resilience. Good. What else?
Focus.
Focus. Okay, good.
Integrity.
Integrity. What do you mean by integrity?
Doing the right thing even when no one's looking.
All right, awesome. I love that answer.
Refocus.
You know, refocus. Okay. What else?
Like being mindful.
Being mindful, being aware, being in the moment. Excellent. Any others? Pete?
Confidence.
Think it's confidence? I was waiting for that one. Usually, I mean, if athletes, they're going to say, man, confidence is the most important mental skill, right? That belief. So here's why I bring up that question. Is because whatever you think is the most important mental skill, it's the most important mental skill. See, there's a story behind why you think that's the most important, why it's integrity, why it's discernment, why it be focus. And the story that you have, see, the challenge is do you run with that? Like, do you communicate that to your family? If it's refocused, do you communicate that? Because whatever you think is the most important mental skill, it's absolutely the most important mental skill. It's just, do we communicate it and do we run with it? Now, I bring that up because when we talk about, when you hear mental health, right? When you hear mental health, I think we think mental illness. And that's where the stigma lies. When I hear physical health, I don't necessarily think of a broken bone. Yes, it's part of it. But when I hear mental health, I want us to think of mental wellness. I want us to think of just health. I want us to think of mental strength and mental toughness. But when I say mental toughness, there's a stigma with that too. I think when we hear mental toughness, we think physical exertion, right? Like taking these really huge tires and flipping them. Like that's mental toughness? I don't think so. But I also think when we hear mental toughness, we think I have to do it on my own, pull up your bootstraps and just go forward. And I totally disagree with that. You see, I think mental toughness is asking for help. So how do we define it? Well, mental toughness, everybody give me 10 seconds, trying to divide 10. 10 seconds. Ready? All eyes on me? Ready to go. Mental toughness is it's how we deal, handle, and cope with the adversity, the setbacks, and the struggle in life. This is a matter of when, not a matter of if. Go ahead and space back out. So that's all mental toughness is. Now, I have a podcast where I ask every single guest to define mental toughness, and the definitions vary a little bit, but every definition has that common theme of adversity. How we deal and handle and cope with adversity. That's all mental toughness really is. So raise your hand if you really want to have a lot of adversity this week and really struggle. Right? Me neither. I want this week to be nice and cozy and safe. But how do we become the best at getting better? It's only how we handle that adversity. And that's the part where you come in. Now, I think that every single mental skill can fit in one of those. This is a hierarchy of mental toughness. Every morning when we wake, we're in motivation. Do we get out of bed? Do we hit the alarm? Do we make the bed? How bad do we want it? When you hear determination, perseverance, persistence, resiliency, that's all under motivation. Confidence, the belief, the trust that you have in yourself and your team. Your focus, do we get nervous or do we get excited? And then refocus. How well can we let go of mistakes? I think when it comes to the mental game, mental toughness, and mental health, we're always living in one of these spaces. And again, this is not static. This is dynamic. We can be at the very bottom in motivation all day long, or we could be having to let go of mistakes all day long. But when it comes to building mental toughness, this is where it lies. Now, the first skill, and we'll share a lot of these today, but the first skill, this comes back to this one. It comes back to what's your why, right? It's a very, very common term these past couple of years, but it all has to deal with motivation. So the question I ask you is, why do you want your kid playing sports? Not a rhetorical question. Why do you want your kid to play sports? What is it that you want to get out of? Go ahead, give me some answers. What do we have?
Learn team building.
Team building? Okay, team building, good. What else? Give me some other ones.
Discipline.
Discipline, wants to get discipline out of it, good. What else? Confidence.
Exercise.
Exercise, yes. Develop the social relationships, how to interact, absolutely. What else?
Wear them out.
Good, right? Come home, go to bed.
Learn life lessons they can take after sports.
The life lessons that they can take after sport, good. What else?
Have fun.
Have fun, right? Have fun. Enjoyment. 100%, man. What else? Any other reasons why we want our kid playing sports?
Learn how to lose.
Learn how to lose. Absolutely, right? I mean, the adversity that we have in life. What else? Any other reasons why we want our kid playing sports?
Learn how to compete.
Learn how to compete. Good. What else?
Find themselves.
To find themselves? What do you mean by that?
Figure out what they're made of.
Okay.
Where their strengths and weaknesses are.
Figure out their strengths and weaknesses. Great. Any others?
Maybe a scholarship.
Maybe a scholarship. Okay, so I'm glad. I was fishing for that answer. I just wanted to see if that one came in. All right, so that's a good one. So my very first point of the talk here, right, is I think when it comes to motivation, no matter what, is your why has to make you cry. If it doesn't, it's not your why. It's not deep enough. Because at some point, we're going to face really, really difficult times. At some point, our kids are going to struggle and they're going to have setbacks. And unless we can get back to that original why do they play, then when it really gets difficult, then sometimes we kind of forget that motivation, that why. In our own lives, your why has to make you cry. I think we have to be so passionate about it. Now, the first point that I simply make in this is sport teaches whatever we want it to teach. It teaches whatever we want it to teach. Now, sport by itself doesn't teach anything. It's what we do as athletes. It's what we do as coaches and parents. That's the lessons that we teach. So if we emphasize and we think what's most important is having fun, enjoyment, the life lessons that they can get, being able to find themselves, being able to learn how to compete, if that's what we think that it teaches, then that's absolutely what it's going to teach. Too often what I see where the struggle lies is the only thing that we emphasize, the only thing we talk about is winning rankings and statistics, the outcome, the results. My proof is this, is when we ask somebody, hey, how'd you play? You know, did you win or did you lose? The next question is, hey, did you score and how many did you score? All results based. Not necessarily, hey, did we have fun? Did you learn how to compete? What did you learn about yourself today? Hey, were you a good teammate? Hey, where did you struggle? Where did you have to let go of a mistake? If these are the life lessons that we teach, then are we communicating this with our kids? Because that's how I think we get to be the best. Now, the reason why I'm so passionate about sport, the reason why I love it and it's so near and dear to my heart is for two reasons. Number one is I want every athlete, I love it when we have this feeling here because I don't think there's a better feeling in the world. And I think that feeling of being able to have success no matter what level, I think there's a residue of that and that sticks with them. They can always go back to that success. But the other reason is this, is if you let me know a better environment where it's not like I ever want a 13-year-old striking out with the bases loaded. I mean, it sucks, right? It's awful. But you let me know a better environment where they can teach the lesson, okay, now what? You struck out with the bases loaded. It's a bruise, it's not a tattoo. You failed, so now what? Do we want them learning it when they're 13 years old, or do we want them learning it when they're 26? At some point they get it. So now what's happened is now sports give them that adversity, and are we able to help them navigate that space? That's the first point. That's why I always think sport teaches whatever we want it to teach. Now the second part here is what I have passing out is I've got a simple sheet of papers. Now where you're going to have people on your left or your right, grab one sheet of paper and make sure we pass this down. So I want to make sure that everyone has this. So a quick little activity, because I always love this. So take your sheet of paper, make sure you pass it on down. Now, what we're going to do is anybody not have one? All right, let's go ahead. Let's stand up just with your sheet of paper, Now, what we're going to do on this assignment real quick, okay, is make sure you have your paper like in your hand. And I'm going to ask you to close our eyes. So go ahead and close your eyes. And you can, the point about closing our eyes here is that you can still kind of look at your paper if you're going to need some help. But I don't want us looking left or right. And here's what I want us to do. I'm just going to give you some instructions. I want you to go ahead and fold this sheet of paper in half. We fold the sheet of paper in half. I want you to go ahead and tear off the upper right-hand corner. And go ahead and just drop it on the floor. I'll pick it up when we're done. Go ahead and fold the paper in half again. And now let's tear off the lower right-hand corner. Tear it off, just let it drop, we'll get it. Fold the paper in half again, please. And now let's go ahead and tear off the upper left-hand corner. If you have to open your eyes and make the tear, it's fine. Let's fold the paper in half one more time. Final time. And let's tear off the lower left corner. This is the tough one. But remember, we are all athletes. We're all athletes. After we get that, go ahead and open your eyes. And then hold your paper up if you can, because everyone should look just like this. Hold them up high. Let's be proud of what we have here. You got it there, Scott? Good. Oh my goodness. We have 2 sheets. Go ahead and hold them up high. I'd like to see these. That one is fantastic right there. Look at that. Oh, good. Again, good teacher. So some of you all got an A in this one. You should have 3 of these. Go ahead, have a seat. You can just let that drop on the floor. Now, I had a question here, okay? Why didn't they all look like this?
Perspective.
What is that?
Perspective.
Okay, perspective.
Like how you fold one half versus another person folds a different.
Okay, so how we kind of folded it was different. Yeah, why else? Why didn't this all look like this?
Your instructions maybe weren't very clear.
See, I don't think that was it. I don't think that was it. See, I just think, well, that is impressive. I just think y'all were bad listeners. The instructions weren't clear enough, right? Here's my point. When it comes to mental skills, when it comes to mental health, all eyes on me for a second, right? It doesn't matter what you know as a parent. It matters what they hear. I'm going to say that one again. Doesn't matter what you know, it matters what they hear. Whenever I see a coach-athlete relationship go bad, 100% of the time, it comes back to communication. Expectations weren't clear from the coach, or the athlete felt like the coach no longer believed in him. It always gets back to that lack of communication. Second point, parents, is this one. We are always communicating. We're always communicating. But it doesn't matter what you know, it matters what they hear. So the fact that we might think that we're giving them feedback and instruction and letting them know how they get better, but are they hearing, you don't think I'm good enough? Best thing we can always do is just ask questions. The better questions we ask, the better answers that we're going to get. And then we're hearing what their perspective is all about. But we're always communicating. Have you ever come home and you don't say anything to your spouse or partner, but you come home and you sit down there and the very first thing your spouse or partner says is like, oh, what's the matter? And I didn't even say anything. We're always communicating. Body language, it doesn't talk, it screams. You know what? Your kids can see you in the stands when your hands go like this, or we start praying not to make a mistake. Oh my goodness, like, how could they be doing that? The kids can see you, and they see that body language. Doesn't matter what you say, it matters what they hear. But we're always communicating. I don't think we can communicate too much. I really believe that. I don't think we can communicate too much. With that point, right? When it comes to communicating this skill right here, this is all about how we communicate confidence, the trust and belief. And are we helping our kids, are we helping our athletes with this? You know why? I was thinking about this, is confidence, it takes a lifetime to build, but it takes moments to destroy. So I thought, well, let me give you 5 ways to destroy our kids' confidence, so we can just take that home with us. Boy, that was a funny joke, I'm serious, guys. Seriously, if we want it, I know we feel like we want to destroy their confidence sometimes, but if we don't want to, hey, these are the things I see that we got to avoid, right? Number 1, what always happens? If we tell an athlete, if we tell our kids this, hey, you know what? It's all in your head, it's all mental, it's all psychological. Bam, worst thing that we can tell an athlete. Why? Because all we've done is now we shot them into the abyss, and what they've heard is there's something wrong with me. If this is all mental, then this is supposed to be easy, but we know this is the most difficult part. Telling them it's all mental, it's all psychological or in their head, gives them no game plan on simply how they need to get better. If we want to destroy their confidence, we tell them something like this. Second point is this, right? Compare them to any other player, any other athlete. You know, I had a conversation with a 41-year-old. He played minor league baseball, and when he was 16 years old, his dad, they were sitting in the bleachers together, and his dad pointed out, said, why can't you throw like Dave? And at 16 years old, that's what he remembers. That was a significant moment. We want to destroy their confidence? Compare them to anybody else. Why can't you play like that? Show them what other people are doing. That's how we destroy their confidence. Other one, I love this, right? Hey, let's blame the coach, the field, the weather, the referee. Let's blame them. Then what happens is once we start blaming things, then they're going to start blaming things. And once they start blaming things other than themselves, you know what? Sooner or later, they're going to be blaming you. It's just a matter of time. What are we trying to do? We're trying to teach ownership, not buy-in. We're trying them to take ownership of their own development and their own journey, their own process about what they do. So do they pack their own bag? When they forget their water bottle, do we show up and give that to them? Do we allow them that built-in adversity when it comes to their own sport? Or do we allow them to go ahead and blame things? Other way that I think we destroy confidence is if we only talk about winning, rankings, or results. It's the only thing we talk about. Now, I'll have a lot of parents that say, hey, we never talk about winning. Okay. Let's say that's true. Then the question that I ask parents is this. Okay, how often do you bring up the sport unsolicited to your kids? I said, what do you mean? How often are you just sitting at dinner and then you start asking them, hey, how hard have you been working on? Did you get your shots up? How do you think this game is going to go? Because if we bring this up unsolicited, what they hear is that I'm valued, my self-worth is tied into how I do. it's all tied into the product. Not the life skills that we all mentioned. It's all tied into only if I do well am I valued, because that's what my parents obviously value. That's what they hear. Well, the only problem with that, and it's fine when things are going well, the only problem with it is if when we have that adversity, they face that adversity, now what's their identity? And the last one, I have more parents that reach out to me actually thanking me for this one. It's that car ride home. So the car ride home. The car ride home from games or practice, it's a metal coffin, right? They can't skate, they can't breathe, and we're drilling them with questions. And the questions are is like, what were you thinking there? Like, what were you doing? And the only thing that they hear is, you don't think I'm trying. Look, parents, I can guarantee you this. I've worked with hundreds of athletes. I've never had an athlete that's missed a free throw on purpose. I've never had an athlete that struck out on purpose. They're trying, but if we challenge them, are they trying, then we're going to lose them. So here's what we do, right? This is the strategy. If we take anything away from this, you're going to get a lot of good stuff from this panel, but if there's one thing you can take, implement this, please. So the car ride home. We talk about anything but the game or the practice on the car ride home. And here's what you're going to get. And the reason why this is so important is because I was going to break that rule, right? And I was going to tell my daughter just one thing, one small thing. And my wife said, no, remember the car ride home. Okay. You know, in my expertise and how great I think that I am, and this was such great feedback, when I got home, I forgot what it was that I really wanted to tell her. It was that important. So here's what we do. We go to our son or our daughter and we say, hey, I just heard like a really good talk. And they just said, hey, we don't talk about the car ride. We don't talk about the game on the car ride home. Are you cool with that? And they'd be like, okay, sure. But here's what we do. If we don't talk about it, we just talk about where we're going to go eat afterwards, Chick-fil-A. Then we set up a time we're at home. And can you agree that you give us 5-10 minutes where we can kind of ask you some questions and you give us feedback? Will you agree to that? 100% they're going to be like, okay, well, what are you really asking? But 2, they're going to agree to it. Because in the car ride home, it's all full of emotion. We all have to decompress after a win, even after a loss. And even if they want to talk about it, don't take the bait. Set up a time where everyone's cool, calm, and collected. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get a lot better answers in terms of, hey, tell me what you were thinking. Tell me what was going through your head there. I was just curious. The better questions we ask, the better answers that we're going to get. And then with this one, I'm caddying my very first event on the PGA Tour. I just had my doctorate in sports psychology from the University of Tennessee to start working with this golfer. And you know what? He was interested in the mental game, needed a caddy for that week. Sure enough, I signed up. And you know what? He's playing really well. We are walking onto the 9th green for the second day of a 4-day tournament. And as we're walking up to the green, the scoreboard's up there. Now the scoreboard, it says Christian 6 under par. But in my myopic viewpoint, thinking I'm the best, I thought it said Bell 6 under par. Like, we're going to win this tournament. I'm the best sports psychologist that there is. This caddy is a piece of cake. We're going to cash a nice check, and Tiger Woods is going to be calling me up. We got two more days to go in this tournament. So as we walk up to the 9th green, he tosses me the ball. I grab the ball, and I reach down. I'm caught up in the moment, thinking I'm the best. I kind of see some people double shotgun, like, this is nice. I bend down and I'm cleaning the ball, and the ball just drops in the bag. I reach out, I grab the ball and toss it to him. Like, here you go, pro. Bam, makes the putt, 7 under par, first place. We're walking now onto the 10th tee box. 9 more holes to go just in the second day. As we're walking onto the tee box, this feeling of dread overcame me. And the feeling of dread was, Gary, that was a Callaway 2 blue circle, right? And he wants to know why I'm asking him. He looks, and it's a Callaway 4 blue circle. So in my haste and thinking I'm the best, I handed him the wrong golf ball. The rules of golf are very specific. You have to start and end each hole with the same ball. At the end, you can do anything you want with it, but you have to start and end each hole with the same ball. Rules of golf are also very specific. You call all penalties on yourself. We call the rules official over, let him know what happened. Sure enough, 2-shot penalty. He goes from first back to fifth, just like that. Now, I have lost baseball games before. I've had balls that have gone through my legs. I never felt as small as I did at that moment. See, what is going through my head about how I'm the best ever totally switched. Now it was, Rob, how could you be so freaking stupid? How could you make this mistake? Rob, why don't you set the bag down, go in the parking lot, go home and kill yourself? Because it couldn't get any worse than this. How could you be so dumb? And he doesn't fire me at that moment. But he doesn't say anything to me. So we go on for the next hole. We've got 9 more holes to go. Doesn't say anything to me for the next hole after that. On the 3rd tee box, he looks at me and he says, Rob, he says, look, either you can't do this mental game stuff or you don't believe it, but I need you. I remember saying something like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And you know what it taught me, the power of that one right then and there? All eyes on me. Ready? 5 seconds. Undivided attention. All right, go. Is what we need to do, I think, as parents, is we just need to respond. Don't react. But think about it, right? Our reactions are usually incorrect. If somebody cuts us off in traffic and we react, it's incorrect. If my daughter spills something on the carpet and I react, it's going to be wrong. Our reactions are what's full of emotions. Anytime something happens bad at the sporting field, man, a parent made a bad reaction to a call. Think of a reactor, a nuclear reactor, somebody that's ready just to go off. But if we can respond, think of a first responder. This is somebody trained to handle the situation. Cool, calm, and collected. And I think if we can respond, don't react, man, we're going to do such a great job at parenting. Why do I share that one? Because it all gets back to this skill right here, the refocus. You know, what's happened in the last 10 years, what I've seen is more perfectionist athletes than ever before. We get athletes that are safe, don't want to make a mistake. And so what they lack is they lack this skill right here. You know, Kyle Guy from Lawrence Central, last year from Virginia, they went undefeated in the ACC. They run the ACC tournament. And then Virginia becomes the first team ever to lose to a number 1 seed. And then the comeback, right? What a setback. But then this year, Kyle Guy talked about the anxiety he had from that, the death threats that he would have just from a basketball game. But then Virginia comes back this year and wins the national championship. The reason why I share that is because it's not about the setback. It's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. It's always about the comeback. I want you to say this one with me real quick, okay? It's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. Not about the setback, it's about the comeback. Man, we got to be able to communicate that. Because it's really, we're all going to fail. Right? I've never had a pro athlete that didn't choke under extreme pressure. And I'm using the C word here, choke. They don't get to the highest level without missing a PK, without striking out with the bases loaded. There's no way around it. They have to be able to go through that. And so when it comes to this skill right here, it's about how well we can let go of mistakes. If we can just share with our kids that it's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. If failure, it's a bruise, it's not a tattoo. And the best part is failure is an event. It is not a person. It's not their identity. And we got to let them know that and reassure them, let them know what their identity is rooted in. The thing I know about mistakes and failures, when they can let go of it lets go of them. The point is, what do we do with this? How do we communicate this skill right here? When they get all flustered because they're afraid to make a mistake and things get stressed out, we need to remind them later on, after they kind of navigate that, remind them, hey, remember when you were stressed out over that test and you had that event coming up? Yeah, I remember. Did you make it through it? Yeah, I did. You can do that again. We're professional reminders, all we get to do. But we got to hold that in our database about when they overcome that. Parents, I've got one more point I've got to make, and then what we have is, I think the best part is we got an awesome panel that's coming up, and you can be able to ask questions. But And always think about this, right? Like as athletes, we have to finish strong, right? Like I can't be up here like pancakes, right? Like we sit down and we're all excited at first, but at the end, we're just sick of them. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, the last point is parents, it's not who gets there first. It's who can get there and stay there. It's not who gets there first. It's who can get there and stay there. The best 10-year-old or 12-year-old in the nation right now should be the best 16-year-old, the best 18-year-old. They're the person that are going to be at the Olympics and win the gold medal, right? It rarely happens. Why? Because there's so many factors that go into long-term athletic development. There are so many factors into it. And I'll tell you what, we have no idea how good somebody's going to be before they hit puberty. No idea. But you know what we do? We rank the best 6th grader in the nation. Like, that's important. What we do is we live and die by this game, this loss, this season, which is most important. And then we're looking at the short term through a microscope, and we're looking through the long term through a telescope. We always got to get back to, hey, what's the skill? Why do I want my kids playing sport? We get back to our why, it's going to show us that anyhow. And the last point, and this is just a question, but I ask myself this all the time, right? The people that we love the most, why are we hardest on the people that we love the most? Doesn't make any sense to me. Because we want the best for them. All gets back to being able to commend them and not criticize them. And if we can focus on the process, because it's about who they become on this journey, not what they can achieve and not the results. Hey, we got an awesome panel that's coming up. I really appreciate you listening to me, and I'll be able to answer questions at all. But thank you all so much. God bless. All right, hand it over to you, Janet.
All right.
You know what? Should I end with the clap?
Yeah.
You know with that clap.
Let's do it.
Dr. Beresford, can you come up here? Let's go ahead. Let's stand up because everybody's an athlete. I know we can nail this one again.
Microphone holder?
Yeah, please.
I can do this.
Okay, ready? On 3, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Should we do the at the end? Okay, yeah. Let's see how good we can memorize this. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Boy, what a great coach.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Brock. We appreciate it so much. And as he said, we are now ready to move into the second part of our evening event, which I'm really excited to present our panelists to it. And just as a statistical thing, because I should introduce myself as well, my name is Janet Guffey, and I'm the Executive Director for the Partnership for a Healthy Hamilton County. And this is an organization that promotes and works with agencies, organizations throughout the county, as well as the hospitals, our nonprofits. I need to mention Nancy Chance is here with us this evening, and she is that pilot person who was one that began with that vision of bringing health initiatives and priorities to the county. So I am very happy that we are in our 3rd year working with this program. And this just kind of goes right along with what our health initiatives are, and it's the residents of the county who determine those priorities. But we have, for the 2018-2019 school year, 63,371 students in our Hamilton County district. Of those 5 districts. And so we have a lot of opportunities to help support the youth and the children. And we have some experts here, that I call them experts because they work with each of our groups. So we're just going to take a brief moment to have them join the stage. So I will just go ahead and we'll just start here and have them walk on up here. I am so pleased to introduce Dr. Michael Beresford. He serves currently as the Superintendent of the Carmel Clay Schools. And how many people recognize that face here before that? He is actually a Fishers, formerly with the Fishers, HSE, I say Fishers, sorry. I work with Hamilton Southeastern School Districts. So he is actually, when we approached him, he spent over 12 years seeing that aspect of the Hamilton Southeastern Schools. He is a passionate person about mental health and youth, and so we're excited to hear what he has to say and help us bring us along. Next up, we have Brooke Lawson. And Brooke is a mental health school counseling coordinator for Hamilton Southeastern Schools. She oversees the mental health services for the school district. She works with the students and the staff, as Dr. Ron said, to create stigma-free environments. And she also is a resource to the support of teachers and the staff for social emotional learning and trauma-informed practices. She's active in making connections between the school district and the community to create systems of support for students. And Brooke and I have had opportunities to work throughout the county on different initiatives, so I'm so pleased that she agreed to be with us. Next up, we have Scott Spillman. Scott is the Executive Director of Sports. He's a community recreational team sports and a nonprofit in Fishers. He has extensive experience, and I just read that earlier today, because he worked with the youth sports, including marketing development of the Little League International in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And I spent some time out in that direction, as a part of the country. He also has served the Hamilton County Sports Authority, a division of the Hamilton County Tourism. He also had his Little League Central Regional headquarters in Indianapolis. So he is here to help work with best practices of our sports leagues. So we're excited to have him. And not last, and certainly not least, is Kert Toler. Kert is also the third of our cohort for this program this evening. And Kert is a youth soccer coach with Indy Premier Soccer Club and is vice president of the Stents Corporation. He was also a Fisher native. He grew up here, attending Hamilton Southeastern School. He's a soccer player, blast, and he went on to play semi-professional in Indianapolis. So he spends most of his time with players that are ages 11 to 14. And then we have, I moved over here and had my thumb over, thank you, and she was not in the front row here, is Lulu Black. Lulu is a senior at Hamilton Southeastern High School, and she has been competing in various cross-country and track teams for 4 years. She has received 3 individual all-state titles and helped to contribute to the cross-country team 2-time podium finishes and to the state championship. This fall, Lulu will be studying and competing at North Carolina State University. In January, she has published an article titled "A Letter to the Sports Community," in which she spoke up for fellow student athletes. She helped identify some of the impacts and topics, both spoken and unspoken, surrounding mental health in student athletes. So let us give a warm welcome to our panelists.
I feel like Donahue or something. Lulu, is it okay if I start with you?
Sure.
Okay. So, like, we just saw an awesome presentation, right? Like, enough about that guy. Like, what'd you think of that guy?
I thought it was great.
I'm just kidding. That wasn't the question. I'm sorry. No, seriously. So you wrote a really important article in terms of mental health. Can you explain, like, why did you feel that article was necessary? Why'd you write it?
Yeah, so I thought, is this working?
Yep.
Okay. I thought that it would be important for me to provide a little bit of background information about myself, so they covered it a little bit. Since my freshman year, I have been on the on Hamilton Southeastern's cross-country and track teams. Ever since freshman year, I've had a pretty big impact on our team. I've been our top runner, and so since my freshman year and since I've been an underclassman, this put extreme pressure on me, just knowing that I was very young, but also a huge part of our team and how many points we scored and how we placed at state. So all of this put a lot of pressure on me. I felt like if I didn't succeed, that I'd be letting all my teammates down, my coaches, the state, and everyone else around me. So I like to say that I actually put a lot of pressure on myself. I felt like other people were giving me pressure, but a lot of it was self-imposed. And that's just sort of the background of what I had been going through since freshman year. And I actually also write for our school's newspaper, and I also help contribute to the yearbook. So I thought that this would be a really good platform for me to kind of get my word out, something that was very personal to me and I was very passionate about, because I just thought that this would be a great opportunity for me to be the one to speak out on this issue. So basically, at first I was sort of nervous to write this piece because, like I said before, it was very personal to me, and I was scared because I am a leader on the team and I didn't want to seem weak and I didn't want to seem vulnerable. And then I realized that as a leader, I can take the lessons that I've learned and the things that I've had to overcome and use that to inspire other people. And by me being vulnerable and coming out about what I've struggled with, I thought it'd be a super good idea to kind of put this out there so that other people struggling with these problems could have the confidence to get help too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. Coach Kert, let me go to you next. When Lulu was talking about like the pressure that she felt, and a lot of that was like self-imposed, but the pressure sometimes like that parents will inadvertently give or not give. Like, I guess the question is, what advice like would you give to a parent to help them navigate those waters?
So one, I'm not a public speaker, so I apologize. But I think the hardest part for me as a coach really is sometimes the parents. I'm on one side with the players, usually 11 and 13-year-old girls. We show up, we're there to have fun, we like to win, but to me that's an outcome of having fun, being good at what you do. But I'd have a sea of parents on the other side screaming, yelling, cussing, threatening little kids, and it's like, I'm sitting here with a 12-year-old wondering, how is she going to go home to her parents and really enjoy what she's doing every day? I think it's kind of a funny story. I've had a parent after a game come and hit me because she thought our team was too aggressive. As a coach, I don't yell. I kind of get ridiculed, like, why aren't you yelling at my kid? They need to be motivated. And I go, that's not going to help them. I mean, they're trying their hardest. And I say, put yourself on the field. Is it going to help to have someone yelling at you to kick the ball or to score or to do something different? But kind of to your question, advice is really just being supportive. I always think when I played, my mom didn't know anything about soccer. She would sit on the corner, pretend to read a book. We were different colors, so everyone knew she was my mom. They'd always be talking to her. And she gets all this advice from all these dads. And I'd get in the car and she'd go, how'd you play today? I go, well, I got scored on. I was the goalkeeper. And she goes, I didn't see that. And she would just pretend like she didn't know all the mistakes that I made and really just ask me, how was it? Did you enjoy it? What would you do different? And just kind of pretend. And then the next day, she'd be like, well, you came out too fast in the breakaway. You probably should have. But then I'd calm down, and I really respected her for that. I think just being supportive to your kids and making sure they enjoy it's the best advice I can give.
Scott, for you, for the Executive Director of HSE Sports, can you talk about that in terms of the mission of what you all provide?
Yeah, so we're the community recreational team sports organization for the City of Fishers and HSE School District, and our mission really is to provide an opportunity for kids in our area the ability to learn character development, physical fitness, and leadership skills. I really sum it up to, at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that our kids are having fun and they turn out to be better people than when we started with them. We're not concerned with trying to turn out the next Michael Jordan or LeBron James. We're not trying to get any professional athletes out of it. We really want them to be able to say that they had fun in the season, they learned some things, and are wanting to continue learning all different types of sports, and then be able to take that into the classroom and onto work and life.
I guess this question is for Brooke and Dr. Beresford. In terms of mental health and coping, can you just talk about that? Where do you think we are right now with that?
Do you want me to go first? Well, so I'm really proud of our school district this year. We have
we have created our own scope and sequence for social emotional learning, which I think is really a preventative approach to mental illness. And so next year, our teachers will start teaching, they'll pilot next year actually, the social emotional learning curriculum. So they'll be teaching things like problem solving, emotion management, skills for learning, so focus and attention, and also some conflict resolution skills in our classes with students. And I think that's really exciting because I think that, you know, it is our job to teach our students academics, but I think it's also our job to teach them those social emotional learning skills. And so that's a big focus for us over the next few years.
You gonna ask me another question, or you want me to stick with this? Ask me another question. For sure, you answered all of it. Now, I've been actually I worked here for Hamilton Southeastern for about 27 years, and I've just finished my 10th month across the river in Carmel. And I got to tell you, when I started in administration, I was a school counselor before that, and we dealt with mental health issues, you know, with different kids at that time back in the 90s. But as we went into administration, the number of students that displayed mental health needs just kept growing. And it got to a point where we started tracking data, and we were having more and more times where we had issues where students were saying suicidal thoughts, suicidal conversations, that sort of thing. And the numbers were going up, and the age groups that were expressing those things were going down to younger kids. And at that point, we said we just have to start doing something about that. And we started working on, you know, what can we do to support our kids in their mental health. And that's where Brooke came from. We were able to hire a mental health coordinator. I'm proud to say Carmel Place Schools hired their mental health coordinator last night, Monday. So real happy that that's going on. But I think a lot of things are happening. There's a lot of pressure on our kids, and you know, people battle over what is it? Is it the social media? Is it where's it stemming from? But basically, we've got kids that have a hard time to find peace and a hard time to calm themselves. And so a lot of what we're trying to do now is put supports in place to be responsive to kids that have, you know, crises. But at the same time, let's start teaching kids some skills, because the stress isn't going to go away. So we need to learn, how can we calm ourselves? How can we solve conflicts without violence? How can we, how can we navigate? And then, you know, and I thought this program was over after you got done, because what a courageous thing you wrote, and how many kids did that touch to say, hey, it is hard, and it's okay not to be okay, and that it's okay to reach out and get the help that you need.
Lulu, this question's for you. So, how do you see, how important is mental health when it comes to athletics?
For me personally, mental health is super important, because specifically to running, a lot of us runners consider running a mental sport just as much as it is a physical sport. So we need to train our mentality just as much as we train our bodies to be strong. I always like to say that strength is not just a condition of the body, but also a condition of the mind as well. And if we truly want to be successful in any sport that you participate in, you have to really pay attention to your mental health.
Excellent.
Do we open up for questions?
Yeah.
You talked about sports, and you guys are in the school, and how do we get the teachers and the coaches on board with what we're talking about tonight? Like, you talked about, you focus on the kids, but we're in this room learning about how do we get the volunteer coaches and the teachers that have been teaching for 20 years and that's not what they want to do. How do we get them on board? And
I think, so in our district with the social emotional learning curriculums, we actually will have classroom teachers teaching those skills, and we think that that's really, really important, because it's important to be able to reinforce those skills constantly throughout the day. So that will be an expectation in our district. And then there's a parent component to that as well. So all of the lessons that we'll be teaching will have parent links that come home. I have a kindergartner right now, and his class is actually doing the lessons that we're teaching, and so I get a sheet once a week that tells me what he's been learning and how I can have conversation with him at home and then reinforce it, and then there's an activity as well. So I was actually just having a conversation with our superintendent about how we spread the social emotional learning to our coaches, because like Lulu was talking about, it's really important in athletics, but it's also important for our club sponsors and everybody to be on the same page, because it really takes a village. And so that is a goal of ours, to be able to spread that message to everyone.
From the sports perspective, it's a great point, and it's stuff that we've had a lot of internal conversations about. For so long, we've always tried to focus on making sure we teach our coaches how to coach the sport itself, making sure that the coaches know how to teach the best hitting or how to kick the ball a certain way. But we've taken a step back and we've realized we also need to coach the coaches on how to just handle kids, and how there are going to be 12 kids out on the field and they're all going to learn different ways. So our soccer league is a great example. There's a life skills program that they implement each week as a different lesson. And along with that, very similar to what Brooke said, there's also a lesson that the parent gets to have a little conversation with the child on the team about what they practiced on the field and then talk about it. This week for soccer, the parents' lesson was teaching optimism as opposed to pessimism. So focusing on the positives of what happened instead of, as adults, we always think of, oh, that's the thing we could have improved. Trying to focus on the kids of what are the good things you did today in practice.
With our soccer club, one thing we're trying to start is, as a coach, we have to do concussion training before we start the season. Somehow implementing a mental health training for parents that they can go through and just understand ways they can help their kid other than trying to coach them on the field or off the field. So that's something we're trying to implement to help.
This is really a little probably Dr. Rob. When some of the older people here were growing up, we were always multi-athletes, high school athletes, all through varsity sports. Seems like today there's just this concentration of single sports, which in my mind creates burnout earlier in the young athletes' lives. So as a parent, is there advice on how you can figure out if your child is really burned out of the sport, where they need to move into a different activity, or they're just struggling and getting into some of the mental toughness things that you communicated earlier? If you went through it and what you would say.
Honestly, for me, I've been running for a very long time, and I've continued to love it as the years go on. I used to play soccer, and I used to be a dancer, and I was involved in a lot of sports, and eventually I just singled it down to running. But the advice I would definitely give to parents is just to simply just listen to your kid, and your kid knows what they enjoy and what they find happiness in the most. And so listening and understanding them is probably the most important thing that you can do, because they know it makes them happy, and if you just want the best for them, then you would listen to them.
I think it's a great point. It's interesting because we would never ask a pro athlete that you're going to play 2 games on Saturday and then 2 games on Sunday. We'd never ask a pro that, but we're going to ask a U10 player. So it's like, man, they play so much. I agree with Lulu's point. I think it's a conversation that has to be had before every single season in terms of like the commitment, because we've got to allow them that out. Like, is this something that you really want to do? Because if they do, remember, you know what the expectations are. Expectations are showing up at practice all the time. And I think if we just revisit that conversation on a continual basis and be able to allow them that space, I think that's important.
And I just wanted to add into something that a couple of people, as I've talked throughout the community, and said it was a sports relationship, and you mentioned that you had dance. And these are the same principles that I think a lot of our kids who are not in sports, but actually are in competitions from a music standpoint, or just even from the schools and the clubs, that the same principles are right there. And that's why I appreciate so much Dr. Rob's comments about that, because I know that we've had conversations about kids having such anxiety, and it crosses over between the classroom and the sports focus. But thanks for that.
I wonder about the cultural. I mean, this is all about we're expected to be the best, right? And and a lot of young people that get into sports, it's like they're going to be an Olympian. and they go to practices nonstop. I mean, I was a swimmer. I swam. I was committed. But the practices that these kids have to do now, it's like everybody is going to be a Michael Phelps or somebody, you know, and that on top of school and the pressure to get into college, how do we address that as a society? And how are you in the school district? It's great that you have some mental health support, but that's in school. What are you doing to tie that to the community and the parents that have these expectations?
Why do I get the hard questions? Thanks for that. No, I think it's not a school thing, a parent thing. It's a us thing. You know, we all have to be on the same page with that. I can really. I've worked with a lot of kids over a lot of years, and sometimes that drive to be perfect, that drive to be number one, can really cause kids to have a lot more pressure put on them, and everything that Rob described, you know, especially in the 5 ways to really discourage your kid. I've seen all 5 of those real in life, and work with kids trying to struggle through that. But I think the most important thing is that idea of the results, that we want to be the best, we want to be the champion. We have to tick that down and say, we want you to be the best that you can be, and not measured against anybody else but yourself. I was a cross-country runner back in the day, and I had a real interesting thing. I was a very focused person, and you know, we probably have more in common than you know. But I was very focused. And I got back from a race, and my mom said, "Did you have a good time?" And I said, "Nah, you know, I ran a little bit over 5 minutes a mile, about 5:02. It was pretty good. One of my best." And she said, "What are you even talking about?" I asked if you had a good time. How did you get a good time? And I was like, "Yeah, I guess. You know, I guess I had a good time." And you know, it's kind of funny. You know, Mom's been gone a long time, but you know, it stuck with me. I was like, "Am I having a good time at this? Am I enjoying this?" And one of the little quick story I'll tell you is I went to a coaches meeting one time, and the coach shared what's the number one thing that high school students. I did a survey of all these high school kids and said, "What's the best thing about high school athletics?" And the number one answer was the relationships with the teammates. My friends that I met through sports and we become close is by far the best thing about sports. And on the contrary, it was like, "What's the worst thing about sports?" And they said it was the PGA, and it was post-game analysis on the way home in the car. And so, you know, that whole notion is we just got to get away from the idea that, you know, we're comparing you to other people. One of the most cancerous things I think it happens on teams in high school sports is that we start getting our kids to compete against their teammates, when everybody on the team should be trying to get better for the collective whole of the whole team, and that's what we should be preaching. But instead, it's like, you need to beat out so-and-so to get this job or whatever. And, you know, the more appropriate response is you need to work as hard as you can in practice, and then the coach will determine whether you get your shot or not. And if you do, you know, have fun with it. You know, take advantage of it because you get a great thing happen. So that's all I got for that.
A little bit on that too. I think that the HSE School District has an amazing athletic community. One thing I did point out in my article was that a lot of athletes do think that, you know, we're just identified by like how well we did or how many points we scored or what time we got, when really in the first place we're just doing this to have a good time and to have fun. And so also in my article I was talking about how we need to shift what success looks like in our sports community, and how we need to measure success by how much fun we had and the connections that we were able to form during the meet or during our whole season, not just by the scores or the points or the other statistics.
I had a question kind of to build on what you were saying. What if you have the athlete that enjoys playing but not to the caliber of the other competitive students, and they don't make the team? What kind of conversation do you have with that student as a parent?
Well, so first I can speak to myself as a proud Fishers resident, growing up in Fishers and going to HSE High School. Anybody that knew me as a child knew that I was the kid that was out late at night on the driveway shooting baskets, way beyond the point of where people should be shooting baskets anymore. I'd wake up each morning and I would shoot 100 shots just like Larry Bird on my driveway. I was positive I was going to be the next best basketball player, but I'm 5'9", and I hit puberty at 12 and stopped growing, and very quickly basketball and that dream passed me by. And I remember, I actually was just talking to my parents about this the other day. I remember the conversation they had with me when I was the last kid cut in the 6th grade basketball team, and it was never about, you know, oh, those coaches wronged you, or you know, somebody was out to get you. It was about, well, what did you learn from this? You know, what can you take from this lesson to put your energy into something else? And I realized, you know, I actually really liked the running drills during basketball more than I liked the actual basketball game, and that was actually a kind of a paradigm shift for me, that I realized I actually like running more than I like playing basketball. And I turned out being a cross-country and track runner in high school. So it was a great opportunity. I would have never learned that if I wouldn't have been cut from that basketball team. So, you know, the conversation we tell our parents for the travel teams that we have in our program is try to do the same thing. You know, right now it seems like it's the end of the world, and especially if, you know, it's been built up in the house that this is really important, it can be, you know, borderline devastating. But if you can kind of change the conversation to what's our opportunity to move on from this, what can we learn from it, and, you know, direct our energy somewhere else, it can actually be more positive than negative.
Don't have a great answer to how to not allow a player to make a team. It's probably the hardest part of my job as a coach. So I guess I can give you a story from the other side. Probably the best female soccer player I ever coached. When I was coaching at Fishers High School, she was a freshman. The girl probably had 10 Division I opportunities as a freshman. And I remember after practice, she came and talked to me one day and she was crying. And I'm like, you know, what's wrong, Nicole? Is everything okay? And she goes, I don't want to do this, coach. I'm like, what's that? She goes, I don't want to play soccer this year. I want to join, you know, the theaters team. She's like, this is my one opportunity to do that, but my coaches are going to be mad at me. My parents are going to feel let down, and she didn't know what to do. And I said, don't play. I mean, and, you know, she's at Purdue right now. She played for a year there. She's doing internships, loving life. And I think it's really just directing the kids to do what they love, and it's not always going to be the sports team that they make. And I tell people that story a lot because she was just someone that made an impact on me, and still stay in touch.
But she didn't play.
She actually did. So her junior year, she came back. I think that might have been the year they got pretty far in state, if not won. And senior year, she stopped again. So her team kind of, you know, they let her come back anytime because she was that good. But, you know, I encourage her to do what you want to do, not what you feel you have to do for, you know, the other parents that are on the sidelines to win a title.
This is probably for Dr. Beresford and Ms. Lawson. Lulu is very fortunate, and the students in Hamilton County throughout school districts are fortunate that if they get an injury, they can go to the trainer and they can receive some treatment, or even go to the doctor. But yet, and we spend thousands of dollars on weight equipment and timing systems and whatnot. And I'm curious if there's a conversation within Carmel, Hamilton Southeastern, about hiring a mental health trainer, if not, or someone that is maybe near or next to the athletic director's office, they can make an appointment with and sit and have a conversation when that time is needed. So that's my question. Is there a conversation about that?
We are having some conversations around that as a school district. We have mental health therapists in every single one of our schools that all students have access to, and they have access to them throughout the day. They do have to go through an intake process, and they can work with their school counselor. So we're having conversations around that right now in HSE. What we think is most important is that we take a preventative approach with like making sure that our coaches are talking to all students about what types of things they need to do to stay mentally well. And even not just our athletic coaches, but our club sponsors. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
I've not heard that before, to have an actual mental health coach, for athletes. I'm assuming you're saying for athletes in particular. But right now we're not nearly at that specialized level. But an interesting concept though. So I'm glad I came and I got a new idea.
Could we talk a little bit about how academics come into play with this too? There are a lot of people whose kids aren't, they're feeling the same pressure to be the best with their test scores, with their grades, with what college they get into. One of the projects we're doing with our HCLA group is to look at the stigma of not going to college. And, we're really proud in Hamilton County about how many kids go directly to college, but we're not really tracking as much or reporting on how many are dropping out or really struggling because, they're at IU and they're in the Kelley School of Business and everybody's in a fraternity or they didn't get in a sorority. And I'm having a lot of friends kind of in that phase right now. And their kids were, really great stuff in high school and they're really struggling with this transition. So how do we sort of help them with the academic part of Be Your Best?
I'll take a stab, but I think a lot of the concepts are the same, and I do think that, especially in high-performing communities that we live here in Hamilton County in particular, there is a real pressure to be perfect, and whether we give that message to our kids subtly or not, and I can tell you, I am the imperfect parent of 3 imperfect children, and I'll probably be paying for therapy and into their 40s for the decisions I made. But I do think that that's something that we have to come to grips with. And there's a book called The Price of Privilege. You may have heard of that, which has some interesting concepts because a lot of the suburban kids are really stressed out and anxious, and a lot of that I think is a pressure because as parents we want our kids to do well. We want to encourage them to do our best. And sometimes I think we can get a little overcooked, and then they feel this pressure. And also, some kids are different. Some kids, I call them swashbucklers. They're unaffected by life. They could take a test in Walmart and get, they could get a 36 on the ACT. Other kids, as soon as you put a piece of paper and a pencil in front of them, they start getting tight because they feel so much pressure that they have to perform. And that can be a challenge, and that's something I think that we as school and as parents, we have to kind of keep that in mind and not put that so much pressure that you have to be perfect. It's just do your best and your best on a given day, because sometimes you're having a good day, you can tolerate a lot more. If you're having a tough day and then you get another challenge at it, that day you're just not going to be able to get to the level that you were. And so because life changes, and we all experience that. So how can we communicate that to our kids that this is part of life, life's going to be a struggle, and it's okay not to be okay. You can, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you, and what you are is awesome, and we love you, and there's nothing you can do that would make us love you more. If you got if you had perfect scores and straight A's all right, I couldn't love you more than I love you right now. And there's absolutely nothing you can do so bad that could make me love you less. I've told my own kids, if you end up in prison, I love you. I'm gonna be in prison every day, visiting you. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. We are consistently, here for you no matter what happens. I'll tell you one little illustration that I've really grabbed a hold of here recently. There's a guy named Randy Frazee, and he talked about how we support our kids. And he said, let's say a kid falls into a hole, and our tendency sometimes as parents is to go to the edge of that hole and say, you can climb out of this, you can do this, you can climb out of this, you got this, you can do that. And or we'll say, hey, put your hand there and your foot there, and then climb up to there, and then come over to this side and take another couple, and we try to give them, instructions on how they can be successful. He said, we don't need that. We need you to jump in the hole and be with the kid. And say, you know what? I don't know how we're going to get out of this hole, but I'm with you. And I think that was so powerful for me that because in that way we empower our kids to find their way and allow them to struggle and allow them to fail and succeed and work their way out of some of those struggles. And with that, you build, powerful kids.
Someone mentioned perseverance early on, and Dr. Rob, maybe this is for you to start, but talk a little bit about balancing kind of catering to kind of the preferences of the kids over time, especially in rough days, balancing that with perseverance and trying to build that fighting through those tough times. How do you, that would seem to be over time a tricky one to balance. What are some thoughts on that?
So I answer this the right way. Can you just elaborate a little bit more?
What's that?
Like how do we navigate perseverance and build that muscle?
Yeah, so I mean perseverance and maybe the importance of that skill set. Someone mentioned that early on as kind of one of the maybe the important mental skills, right? Perseverance, sticking with something, having the discipline, fighting through like the tough times, but also catering to, you want your kids to have fun. So if they're having a tough time, and they maybe don't want to play that year, or they want to try a different sport or try something else.
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance
So,
those over time?
so a quick question then. So back to that original point, I think that's a conversation that has to be had like before the season starts, because once we make the commitment, what is commitment? Commitment is staying with something even after the emotion of what we said has worn off, right? Like, hey, I'm going to run a marathon, which is really nice here, but then when it really gets tough. So that's why I always say, having those multiple conversations, but then, perseverance and persistence, I mean, it's a daily, it's not one long race, it's a daily race. I mean, it's, when we start to go through the motions, that's the part that I really look at. Like when we start going through the motions in life, then we're quitting this. Because when it really gets tough, we're not exercising that muscle. And going through the motions when we're not in situations where we can win, that's where the part where I think is can you still persevere when you're in tough situations? That's the part where I look at it. Because when things are going great, it's very, very easy. But Lulu's going to elaborate on that.
So I have a couple personal stories. So the first 2 years of my high school running career, I had to go through a couple things that sort of triggered how anxious I would get during my cross-country and track season. So my sophomore year at the cross-country state championships, I was running in 6th place out of over 200 of Indiana's best athletes, best girl runners. And so this was a huge deal considering that I was only a sophomore, that I was running in this huge field with so many talented people. And I was going down the home stretch, and I was about 50 meters from the finish. And about a mile left into the race, I started to just feel my body start to shut down and I just got so exhausted and felt like I could not function anymore. And so I was running down the home stretch, and 50 meters to the finish, I got dead leg syndrome, which is a thing where runners' legs just stop moving and you just basically fall down and you don't have any control of your limbs or anything like that. So I was 50 meters in 6th place out of this huge field of girls, and I just fell, hit my head, and obviously didn't finish in 6th place. So when I fell, I tried to get back up, and I started running again towards the finish line, and I just kept falling. And I got to the point where all I could do was crawl to the finish line. And I remember the only thing I remember when I was doing that was I'd rather have to crawl to the finish line than to quit and not finish at all. And so that had happened, and that was really tough for me because I obviously had really big expectations for myself, and that was really disappointing. So after the state meet, I trained super hard, came back sophomore year of track, and after my very first race, I got injured and was out for 6 weeks. And so that huge period of time was just super difficult for me. But that also was a time where I learned a lot about myself, and I learned what perseverance was and what grit was and what it meant to not quit and keep going even when times were tough. And I think that the thing that I learned the most was that all of the challenges and all of the struggles that you go through are nothing compared to how good it feels when you know that you've persevered and you've overcame all of those struggles, and the success that you'll experience after those is something that will completely make you forget all of the failures and hardships that you went through.
Any other last questions? Not, please join me in thanking all of them. Also, we want to thank Dr. Rob again for the time that he's given again, Lawson, for being with us this evening. I do want to also congratulate all of you as well for being here, and the fact that we didn't have one phone go off during this time. But now I'm going to ask you to pull your phones out, hopefully, and we have a survey evaluation for this evening. And you can access it, and I will, if we have your email, I will also email this to you in case something doesn't work out this evening. We'll leave the voting, or as we call the survey evaluation, open through the weekend. But if you go into www.menti.com, you should come to a page where it will ask you to put in a code. And that code is